What is up, y'all? My name is Evan Strong, and this is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I am the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, a company where we address the human body. It's not about clothing necessarily, but clothing is the thing that's placed physically on us at all times, and so it has the highest potential out of anything to alter our bodies. And the reason we're called In the Image Clothing Company is because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. And so we get into these chronic patternings and these universal patternings across the globe. Even if it's not the same clothing design, oversized clothing will do the same things to people across the globe as it will anywhere else. And so we address the human body, but we also have three sides to our company. I'll do a little rundown of what we are, and then we'll get into this episode of the podcast. But this side here is In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I actually already mentioned that at the beginning. We have another third of us that is In the Image Clothing Company music. We do all things music, setups of instruments, allowing the body to work through singing and playing, and I make music there as well. And we have our main company side of things where I discuss the anatomy of the human body and clothing, modifications, materials, how to just allow the body to work. Because the human body is about the skeletal system. It's not about the fat content that comes and goes at different times in our lives. It's not about the muscle mass, because that does the same thing. But our bodies really just need their natural foundational positions to be able to be there. And there's a phrase I say all the time, and it is that there's no reason the body wouldn't work unless there was a reason that it couldn't. That could be anything, but living in the modern world that we live in, today's the 11th now of January 2025, it's so common for people to just be in chronic physical pain and not even know why. And so we get down to the truth of what those reasons actually are. And again, we don't even have to meet people. It can be across the globe, which is so beautiful. I call this the gift of video, right? Or audio in this case, if you're just listening to this podcast in audio only. But this also is available in visual plus audio form as well. So we understand where clothing needs to sit on everybody across the entirety of the globe just to allow the body to work. And that is with our pants entirely above our hips, all the way off of them so that the hips can move and open and have their full ranges of motion. And with the waistline, the angle of them needs to be slightly higher in the front than in the rear, because our core needs to always be activated. It always would naturally be activated. That's the center of our whole body. And it's common in modern day for people to have a deactivated core. And that's one of the things that will do it, no doubt. So that angle needs to be there, slightly higher in the front than in the rear, to keep those core muscles contracted or shortened. Now, the tops that we wear, the shoulder seams that are on top, need to sit behind that little bone that's actually the other end of our collarbones, because that allows our shoulders to be in their neutral positions. And if you're wearing a button-up shirt like this one is here, if you're watching this episode of the podcast in visual as well as audio, button-ups are different. They have a band of material rather than a singular seam, so they are just kind of already pretty great as far as allowing them to sit behind the tops of the shoulders. And then right at the very edges for the edge seams of our shoulders, because that's where the shoulders hinge and move and do their motion in that ball and socket joint. So in addition to just allowing clothing to fit correct, we here at In the Image Clothing Company have two prerequisites just to allow the body to be unaltered. In these ways, our shoelacing technique, which you can find where you find us online, and included with the technique is to tie your shoes on both sides evenly over toward the inside. Otherwise, your feet will be altered by any other shoelacing or tying combination. Now, in addition to that, our second prerequisite is to remove all tags from your clothing, including within those shoes, because they're either going to be affecting the ankles, dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, or the arch's ability to naturally grip within our feet. Now, yeah, that's what we are. We address patternings within the body. We allow the body to work. And, we just discuss to the best of our sinful by nature human being abilities, universal truth about really what's going on within the body, because there really is an immense amount of imbalance that's so common. If you're watching this, you can see, and I might do this throughout the episode as well. I'm doing like some massages with my own hands on my wrists here, and that's what I'm talking about is yeah, imbalances, man, across the globe that people are experiencing, and we discuss and show why. So, the actual reasons, I mean, people are going to chiropractors again and again, and people are going to physical therapies and all these things, and just keep feeling like they need to go back. And, well, you don't have to if we can get to the root of it and do all that we can to address it. And it really is clothing. So yeah, let's get into this episode here. What I want to discuss, I do this usually. This is what I have done at the beginning of the podcast episodes. Is I'll have like a title for them going into it, so that I have a little bit of like a kind of something to sort of stick around. As a podcast, wherever it goes is fine. But this one's titled "Mind the Gap." This is episode 36 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. And I want to come at this at quite a few different angles and from quite a few different sides and explain some things. But if you've never heard the term, or like the I guess it's a phrase, mind the gap, I'll give a little bit of context. Really, the biggest thing is when you're getting on a train or like a tram or something like that that's on a track, right? And there's like that gap between, the train pulls up to where you're waiting to get on it, and there's like that gap between the edge of the train and the thing you're standing on, like the train station platform, and you can fall between there potentially, and then you're underneath the train, and that could be very dangerous. So a lot of times there's a sign right there that says mind the gap, like watch your step, and watch that, like be aware of this space that's here and what that space is, and like I said, the potential danger that's within that space. So there's a little bit of context of what that is, and then because I'm going to approach it from more ways than just a physical way, but that as well. So it's going to be, I'm going to, yeah, I enjoy this podcast episode before I've even made it. It's already cool. So for my sake, if you don't think so, then cool. But I'm excited about this for a lot of reasons. Stuff that's just unchanging, stuff that will always be applicable to people. I've got something here I'm going to use as a little visual example. You can get what I'm saying from it in audio as well, but like audio only, right? But anyway, yeah. So when we, think about a train, we think about getting on the train and minding that gap, and there's this potential for a lot of danger within the gap of two safe places, right? Now, I want to start this off with a little bit of gospel way of approaching this, because I think a lot of times what happens is people will, go to church on Sundays, and through the rest of their week, they won't really do much of anything gospel related. They won't be reading their scriptures, and maybe their prayer life isn't really even there, at certain times. I mean, I'm speaking out of experience in that for sure, and going to church as well. It's definitely certain times in my life where I just didn't go to church for months at a time, and up to like however many months, maybe even over a year at times. I mean, I doubt, just really not anything about me, about like I'm not that bad, but I just, because of like where I live and who I live around, I doubt there was any time in my life where I went like a whole year without at least going to like a one Sunday of church. But I mean, pretty much had the intention at certain times to just like not really care and not go. And same with scripture reading. I mean, that's something I didn't do, man, until I was like 22, 23. Shoot, I mean, I don't even know for sure, because it's probably somewhere around age 23, I actually started reading my scriptures. That's really the year of my life when I actually like met Christ, which is crazy because I grew up in the church, born into the covenant of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And as a kid, especially, we were going to church pretty much every Sunday, but like I really like met Christ in like a real way when I was 23. And so yeah, the whole idea of minding the gap, what I'm saying within the church type stuff is, as far as going to church on Sundays is a lot of people, man, and myself included, like I'm saying, I'm not singling out, like, I'm not condemning others. I did this, man. I go to church on Sundays, and then throughout the week, it's like, kind of did whatever a lot of times. Sunday, I mean, you're there and you know why you're there. You're there because it's church, because you're going to learn about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the truth of all things. And then during the week, you kind of just do whatever you want. You know, maybe you've never done that. Maybe you're a frequent doer of that. And in my time of being here, it's been on both ends, definitely. Sometimes I've been very, very, very intentional to have my week be as much like a Sunday as Sunday was. And then other times in my life, I'd be doing things during the week that we should never do, and maybe like continuously throughout that week, I was like taking part in behaviors like that. So I think there's a beautiful thing about what we call institute. We've got institute within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and whatever that word can mean wherever you are on the earth or in whatever, yeah, around here, what institute means as far as the church is, it's Wednesday nights for us, at least, right where I'm at, and we go to the church house and meet there, just wherever it's held, and we it's basically like a Sunday service kind of, but like in the middle of the week. Ours is on Wednesdays, which is right in the center of, between Sunday and Sunday. I love that. Um yeah, so we'll gather together, and it's the one that I go to. It's people ages 18 to 25, and I'm 25 right now. So, a lot of peers that you're around, and you're just there to learn the gospel and to have like a time set out during the week to where you're still centered with, gospel learning and doing all that you can to just kind of break up your week. And I love that. So with going along with Mind the Gap, that's the thing is there's this gap, right? We all know Sunday as being Sunday as far as, Christians. If you don't know what Sunday is, the way that, us Christians understand what Sunday is, then yeah, Sunday we call it the day of rest. It's the Sabbath. It's the seventh day of the week. And within the truth of all things, our God created the earth in 6 days, and he rested on the seventh day. So that's why we rest on Sundays. That's why we're called and commanded as disciples of Jesus Christ to treat Sunday like a little bit of a different day than other days of the week, and be a little bit mellower and more intentional about what we do, staying out of worldly things. But the whole point is, that's what I'm saying, is mind the gap. Because from Sunday to Sunday, you don't do stuff different, ideally, none of us as human beings, between the Sundays. Every day should be treated as Sunday, just like, Christmas time comes around and I say, well, every day is Christmas, because all Christmas is to remember our God's birth onto this earth when Jesus Christ was born 2025 years prior to now. And so every day should be treated as much like a Sunday as Sunday is, but we're sinful by nature, human beings, and what ends up happening a lot of the time is we'll go through the week and it's like this gap, and it's like that dangerous little area between the train and the train station platform, and you fall into certain sins throughout that week between the safeties of the Sundays, and you know that's potentially a whole dangerous thing. But then you think, as long as you can make it out of that gap and get back to the other side, the next Sunday, then you're fine. Then you just go to church and you kind of like think you're all cleared because you're at church, and so that makes it all better. And again, even if yeah, it's sad. Ah, it's crazy, dude. And you see this, I mean, you see this happening a lot. So I think I love the idea of mind the gap. I love the phrase because I'm gonna get into a lot of stuff with this. It's gonna be really sweet. Just how relatable this is to, how much stuff this actually ends up like. You'll see. You'll see as I go along. But yeah, man, I mean, I love Institute, man. It's such a gift to be able to have because it breaks up the week. I mean, it's right in between the 2 Sundays. It gives you this time to have set out to where that's the reason you're going, and it doesn't matter where you're meeting. We talk about the church as, we call it Zion. Anyway, it gets said like Zion is not a place, but it's a people, right? I mean, really, the body of Christ and Christ's church isn't a place, but it's a people, because you can have church outside. You can have church in somebody's home. You can have church in like a dedicated church house, and you can do it anywhere. Really, what church, as far as like that word means, is yeah, the sons and daughters of God and disciples getting together to really, you know, just learn more about him and be in the presence of him that dwells within us. And I love Institute, man. I really do. But that's what I'm saying about, like, when there's so many times in my life where I just had this whole gap of not doing what I knew I should, I mean, I didn't go to Institute until I was like probably, I don't know for sure, but 23. Well, that's what I'm saying. That year was really when it all happened for me. No joke. Not that that would be a joke, but it's kind of hit me this past week. I've been thinking that it was that year of my life, and it's really cool. So, age 23, man. But anyway, when we go to Institute in the middle of the week, it really, it's a good reminder, and it's a good like time to take us out of the world, man, and remind us of the gospel, because it's there no matter what. But sometimes we get distracted, and that's kind of the thing, is with that gap on the, getting onto a train. It's that gap's there, and it just is. But as long as you're being intentional and aware and trying to be focused on what you need to do, you get over that gap safely, and you just go onto the train. But if you're getting a little bit distracted, a little bit caught up in things and trying to do more things at once than you should be, and got your focus in a place that isn't supposed to be, and whatever, you get, I mean, whatever could come from that, dude. You can fall in that gap, and it's a potentially very damaging place to be in. I've been there, man. Not literally in a gap under like a train car, but I mean in this like metaphorical gospel gap, dude. I mean, I spent so much time there, and it's so damaging. It really, really is. So anyway, yeah, I love being able to go to Institute on Sundays, or we don't go on Sundays, Wednesdays, but it is kind of a crazy thing, man, to have these gaps between the stuff that we know is so good. And it goes for anything, though. I mean, prayers, because we are commanded to pray continuously without ceasing. And I'm always mentioning we're never going to be able to do that perfectly, because we're just humans. And if there's ever been a moment in your life that you haven't, since you knew that you can pray to your living God, Jesus the Christ, if there's been a moment between knowing that and then now that you haven't been continuously praying, then you've already messed up on that. That's what I mean. We're sinful by nature, and so I think it's a really big thing to see that, we sometimes we get in these gaps though that last like some time. And there's been times in my life where I went so much time without even like saying pretty much any prayers. And really, we should be praying as often as we can. I mean, because that's really what's going to cause our life to work, no matter what else. Because even if you think you're quote unquote slacking on things that you believe you should be doing, or other people have told you should, if you're praying, I mean, our God really is above everything, and he'll put things in alignment and put them in their place. He's orchestrating our whole existence as human beings on this planet. So prayer is really the thing, you know, it really is. And so what I'm saying with that is we get in these gaps of not praying for such a extended period of time, and it can be very, very damaging to us. And so, yeah, dude, I mean, mind that gap, because I mean, it's reversible, I mean, you fall in this gap at the train station, someone can pull you out of there, someone tells the train conductor that there's someone down there and the train doesn't pull away and you're fine. I mean, stuff, it's a lot of this is entirely reversible, but it is a place that we don't ever want to be, regardless. And so I just think there's such an importance to realizing that we get ourselves into these gaps, and no matter what influences are around us that are playing into it happening, it really is us, man. I mean, we got to take accountability for that. I mean, if we're not doing everything we can, I actually have an episode of the podcast, one of the high 20s, titled Taking Accountability. Within there, I mentioned a similar thing. If you're not doing everything you can, then whatever little bit that you're not doing, you got to be taking accountability for. I mean, like, because if you got to be going to church, and if you got to be reading your scriptures and saying your prayers, and if you've had a conviction within yourself of the truth of this and what it does for you, and how present our God really is, and then you don't do these things and there's like a gap between it, then it's on you, man. I mean, we've got to be able to internalize that and take accountability for it. Because, I mean, sometimes we're placed in places where we're around some pretty terrible influences, but we're supposed to be, because that's what's going to be teaching us the lessons we're here to learn and be strengthened in the way that we're supposed to be. And so no matter what, I mean, no matter how much we feel like, yeah, but it wasn't my choice because I was around this guy and he distracted me and I had to do this and that and what, again, any amount of it that's up to you, you have every, like, accountability that you have to take for that. So, yeah, man, I mean, minding that gap, I think it's a big thing, like within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, when we get temple recommends and get the ability to go within the dedicated house of the Lord and just spend time in his presence and do whatever it ends up being for you at that time that you're going there for. I haven't actually ever been in a temple, bro. I think you can tell I changed a little bit once I started to say that, because I wasn't planning on talking about this at all. Not that I'm holding it back, but it's just that, yeah, it hits me because it's real. Within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we have our temples, and we get what's called temple recommends that allow us to go into the temple. And nobody's excluded from going to the temple, but there's just kind of like a screening process in a sense, just to keep it a holy place, to keep it a very respectful, nice place. People, you have to do what you need to do in order to get in there, and it's not some kind of like crazy requirement list. It's just, kind of like a little bit of a screening, like a bouncer at a club. That's so funny because that's exactly, it's totally opposing how the temple is like just this beautifully peaceful place, and a club is like the opposite. But I love it when my examples get kind of like silly like that, just to show how real it is, because that's what I meant. I meant to say it. It just sounds funny. But yeah, I mean, you've got a bouncer just checking IDs, making sure people are old enough to come in when there's like alcohol being served or whatever. There's no alcohol within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints temples. There is none. Just let me be very clear. But I also really do love how real this example is. Like how much it took me off guard. I love that. But no, within the temple, it's a similar thing in the sense of there's certain requirements to go in. That's all I'm saying. Very, very much not like a club. Oh my gosh. But I love that. I love that I said it because, like, it's so, like, such a wild example. The contrast between the two. But no, anyway, yeah, this is great. When you go, you go to the temple, and a lot of times, because that's what our prophets, that's what they're saying, and more as we get, you know, as time goes on and we get, more of a sinful world that we're around. I mean, all these things that have been prophesied, they're just coming true. If you don't know the gospel of Jesus Christ, it is like I always say, if you've never heard me say it, that's what I say. It's just the truth of all things, and it is. Don't believe me. I always say that too with what I say. Don't believe me. Just here to relay some stuff, but just give some information. But it's the truth of all things, and um, all these things that are happening within the world and how crazy things are getting, it's been prophesied about for thousands of years, and it's all coming true. So as we get closer to just crazier life, deeper into these prophecies, closer to what's called the last days, closer to the second coming of our God, where Jesus Christ will come back again. Because, so as we're getting closer to things getting crazy, and just as things, you can look around and see that they are, we are getting told more and more by our modern day prophets to just go to the temple a lot, and just continue to go to church and continually, like, progressively more make sure that we have a really strong rooted testimony of our God, because we need it, and that's what we're going to rely on, because he is who we rely on, because he's the only savior that actually can save everything and anything and all things and all people. So, we get told more and more to just continually keep going to the temple. And that's why I started this part of this by saying that I haven't been through the temple. I got a temple recommend, and then within like a, month or two of that time period, I ended up getting really deceived and going through a lot of stuff that was really hard to deal with, and just a lot of stuff. And I ended up removing my records from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and now I'm going to be reinstating them after, the time passes that it has to pass, which as of now it's a year, in order to, reinstate my records. But what I'm saying with that though is, those of you who have gone to the temple, or those of us who do go to the temple, or however that can be phrased, if there's, times where, similar to going to church, you've been going to the temple for, X amount of time and pretty often, and then you just stop, and there's that gap of like, nah, I used to go all the time, man. It's been a while. You can see it, you can see your life start to just have the repercussions that do come from that. And, things like that within my own personal experience of leaving the church, and just this gap of time, not having, my just not being quite where I should be, and it's a place that I already was, and it was myself that caused me to not be there anymore. Even though, a lot of outside things is what, caused me to make the decision, it still was me, and you got to take accountability for stuff like that. But I think these gaps kind of sneak up on us, and so much easier than we might think. And it'll happen without us realizing, and then, like, some time will pass and we'll realize and be like, "What the it's been that long since, like, whatever it has been," and it's a shock to us, man. And so I think that's one of the big things with these gaps in pretty much all ways. I can't speak for what I haven't spoken for yet, but, things know that I'm gonna at least try to touch on within this, that's the case, is like these gaps just sneak up on us, and we don't realize it until some time has passed, or until some, like, damage has happened, and in whatever way it does end up being. And so, yeah, I think it's just so important to mind the gap, man. I mean, because I think a lot of times what we do is we think like, oh, we're doing good and stuff, and so since things are going so good, we'll kind of get a little bit lenient, or even somebody who's sitting at that train station, man, and like watching the gap. If there's like, one of the train, um, what do they call? I was gonna call it like a freight line, but that'd be like on a boat, like the freight line crew, but for the train. I'm just gonna call it the train crew. If one of them is like sitting there, kind of watching people to try to keep people safe, and keep them out of that gap, man, so they don't fall underneath the train. You know, um, a lot of times we can be in something that we're doing so commonly and so often that we just don't do it very diligently. And so these people, working at the train, they might just be like, this is my everyday job, and I'm always watching people, making sure they don't fall under the train. It just never happened since I worked here, so, I'm just kind of casually doing it, not so worried about it. Not that we need to worry, but we need to be diligent. Because what can happen is right then when they're saying that and they stop looking, that's when little Timmy might be underneath the train, dude. And that stuff happens. I mean, I don't want anyone to get all like, I'm not trying to make light of that. I get it, but I mean, things just happen. People die. We go through stuff. Crazy things happen that we would have tried to avoid if we could have. But like, there's certain things that are just out of our control, man. And that's, one of those things that just it could happen. So that's kind of what it is. These train people, they're just, yeah, I know that it's my job to be watching this gap, but it's okay. We've never had anyone fall in yet, and you go into the temple all the time or going to church on Sundays, and it's like, yeah, I know that I should, be making sure I'm doing this, but it's all right. I was doing it for a good while. We're doing it pretty well. I'm still doing it in certain ways, I think that's the thing that happens is it's just it slips away from you. Like I'm saying, it sneaks up on you so easy, man. I mean, because what'll happen is we, might start doing something that we weren't doing before, as far as like a way of learning about the gospel, or reading, or like a seminar that we go to, or whatever, or we're attending certain things. And so we kind of almost like do a little bit of a trade-off without realizing it. It's like, I know we're supposed to go to church every Sunday, but I started going to this thing on Thursdays with my homies downtown, and like, so it's like I'm still getting the gospel in my life, or stuff like that, that it doesn't seem like there's a gap there, but really it is creating a gap. It's creating a separation because we're commanded to do very specific things. And it is good to incorporate the gospel in everything that we do, but we really become our biggest like antagonist, like our biggest enemy actually in this life is ourselves. And so what happens is justification sneaks in really quick, and then we'll be like, dude, I know I was going to church every Sunday, but once I started, doing this, like, I don't know of an example. I'm just thinking of, I'll just go off what I said about like this thing on Thursday downtown with my homies, I mean, that's what I've been doing now instead, man. It's cool. I mean, we learn the same things as we do at church, but it's like just a different environment and stuff. And then that's how the enemy sneaks in, man, coming to steal, kill, and destroy, all cunning and stuff. That's how he sneaks in there. And he pulls you away from the church, and you didn't realize that's what's happening because you really were going to that thing on Thursday. This is just a hypothetical entirely, but let's say like that thing on Thursday that was, you were going there for it to be gospel centered, and you were learning about the gospel there. But now you've stepped away from going to church on Sundays, and Sunday's still Sunday. It always has been, always will be, the day of rest. It is the Sabbath. And we go to church because we go to church, and that there's reasons for the things that there is. And so we tend to start to justify things because of the good that's in other things, but there's good things in all things, even the most evil ones. There's still like some good within everything. And so I mean, it just gets really sneaky, man, how quickly things get like derailed. Talk about trains, really, seriously. So that's crazy, man. I mean, yeah, a lot of personal experience on my part with that kind of stuff, but it's just you don't realize stuff until it's happened, and that's how kind of, a lot of ways. I mean, yeah, that's just how it is. So, but within our physical body, I don't know, I'm not like just done talking about the gospel within this episode, but I'm going to talk about this for right now too, as well. I'm always talking about, I've worded it this way since very early on with super early, some of the really early In the Image Clothing Company videos and just any content where I'm talking about what tags do. I mean, that's our second prerequisite is removing all the tags from clothing. And since very early on, the way that I've described what tags are doing is I say, anywhere a tag is placed in clothing, it's causing an unnatural gap that's really altering the body's natural workings. And I've said that Like, if there's still videos whenever and wherever you're seeing this that you can find of like the end of 2024, and it's just, or even, earlier, our official like founding of the company was September 23rd, 2024. So anytime between like then and now, that's how I've worded stuff like that, and that's the whole thing about minding the gap. That's what it is. This little tiny tag within like the rear of a shirt collar or anywhere in the pants or sides of clothing or even in the shoes. The shoes tags don't normally cause gaps. At least the ones that like I feel like are the most common nowadays. They're kind of just stuck on there. It's not really a gap so much, but those ones are just because it's really slippery synthetic. You can't activate your muscles against it, but anywhere within clothing, man, I mean, because it's just such a small little gap. That's what I mean by it sneaking in, these things that we don't realize what's happening until it's happened. And that's really how it is. And so, yeah, these small little gaps that these tags are causing in the clothing, that's exactly the same thing. I mean, it's over time, it really it starts as something that, kind of just annoying, and you got a tag in your shirt, one of the first times you notice it or whatever, like maybe as a kid, because tags, I mean, I've talked about this so often, but tags didn't even exist in clothing until within decades back from now, tens of years. And so, but nowadays, yeah, I mean, as a little kid, you start getting clothing with tags in it. You're like, oh, this is annoying. But then as we go through our lives, it's just become something that we've gotten tolerable of. And so it sneaks in, it sneaks away from us as well, though, like the intentionality to be behind just not having something there that's causing that gap. And so then it just over time really damages us. And that's the same with what I'm saying about the gospel, and just these little, it's something so small that'll pull you away. It's something that's so small that'll deceive you, something that's so small that even seems like a good thing in ways. And for whatever that means, that doesn't necessarily relate to tags and clothing. I don't know if there's ever really a time when it's a good thing, but I mean, well, no, I guess so. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that I thought of that because that is, yeah. I mean, sometimes, people put, t- there's scriptures talking about fine twined linen, when we're talking about expensive worldly things and people put importance on the price of their clothing. And that's a thing that goes great with this because yeah, when you have a tag within clothing, a lot of times that's what's making it like valuable is the name brand, who made that thing, and the world and worldly views consider that person or that brand to be like an expensive thing. So yeah, that's what I'm saying when you can see that slight bit of good in something, in that way, it's almost an asset to have, like an item of clothing, like something you could sell and then use the money for something else that you need to use that money for, like, or even bartering your clothing, like trading a more expensive item of clothing for like something else you need, whatever that could be. I mean, there's times like that, where you could see a little bit of good in something like a shirt tag, but it's a little bit of a gap. And what it's doing is just a slow damage to your body, causing these chronic patternings within you. So, yeah, chronic patternings of skipping out on church on Sundays, right? Chronic patternings of not going to the temple as often if you had been in the past. Chronic patternings of saying less prayers because one morning it was, somebody made you breakfast and you wanted to go down there and eat with them right immediately when you woke up rather than saying your morning prayer if that's how you've been approaching it, and so it's not a bad thing to go eat breakfast with this person and, have this good moment. It's like, one of your family members or someone you care about or whatever. But if it caused you to skip out on your morning prayer that you normally have, that's that little tiny gap, man. And you did it for a good reason, in a way, right? To go spend time with that person that you care about. But now that little gap can build over time and you can go from that being the first time that happened to now skipping out on your, if that's what you approached it as. Not that prayers have to be only in the morning or like whatever. I'm just, I mean, it's a common thing for people to wake up and pray first thing. And I'd say that's great to do, I mean, there's a lot of scripture talking about praying first thing in the morning. So, just that quick and easy though, there's your little bit of a gap. And then it can just over time just, get bigger, get more of a problem. Even if the gap's just the same size, it can get more commonly done, or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, it's sad. It's unfortunate. And I say that, it's unfortunate that we're allowed to make our own decisions because all our decisions on our own ends, but like, our own doings do is pull us from God. But he's, given us the ability to do that and have that choice be ours to make. I don't I don't like it, dude. I don't, but I understand it. And I get how that benefits us. And so it's weird, man. It's the gospel paradoxes. Paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ, I like to say, because I also really like alliterations and, things that sound like cool together. I make a lot of music too, right? 1/3 of our company, as I mentioned, we've got music. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of alliterations in music, is what I mean, wordplay and stuff. I really enjoy. But yeah, minding the gap. I have this shirt here because, and if you're just listening to this in audio only, I'll describe what I'm saying. You're not missing out. But as well as like just the tag that a gap that'll be caused by the tag, and this one's cut out, but in the rear of this shirt collar, but within like the armpits of sleeves, of clothing, you've got this here seam that comes down, right? I mean, you've got the seam that goes all the way around your arm, like where your arm attaches into your shoulder, and then right underneath your arm and your armpit, you've got that seam that comes out to the end of the sleeve, whether it's a short sleeve or long sleeve. And there's so many ways of stitching clothing, clothing looks so different in certain parts of the world as it does in others, but this is so common, and it just has been for a very long time. I don't know how long back I can speak for personally because I wasn't there, but it's been a long time. I mean, even since there was just clothing to begin with, it's probably stitched so similar to this. But what'll happen is this seam that goes down your armpit will cause a gap between where your arm naturally sits against your side, your rib cage and the inside of your upper arm. No matter how much like body mass of whatever kind it is between there, you still need to sit against yourself, or else there's a gap, and there just is, But what's so common with these is they'll bring it down and they'll stitch it to where it's, going only one direction, and well, that's just pulling your whole arm from your armpit, and the biggest thing is if those are imbalanced, then now you've amplified that. I mean, you already don't want any kind of gap there. Then if it's only going one direction, it's changing your body, putting your shoulders more forward or putting them more back, or really what that is internal versus external rotation that goes down to the ends of your fingertips, but it travels also down to your feet from that little tiny stitch that's like 1/8 of an inch or like a 1/2 centimeter, somewhere around that measurement. That's both metric and standard, so pretty much the whole world could understand, similar to what I'm talking about. Just a really small little seam there in your armpit that's causing a lot to your entire body. And so, it'll do a ton to your hands. It'll do a ton to, like I'm saying, it changes the rotation of your feet and the arches within them. And, the upper traps, which is the muscle that goes from your shoulder up into the base of the rear of your skull, I mean, everything. And I also just love that I'm documenting that in this episode of the podcast, because this is what I would call one of the more early episodes of the podcast, even though it's episode 35. Like, as far as the time period, I mean, we're only about somewhere around 7 months into In The Image Clothing Company at this point. Somewhere around there. I know I said September, but like since I started doing stuff, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't matter so much as far as just, I was just clarifying that I would feel like this is still really early on in the Image Clothing Company. And so, documenting, like, I do know this kind of stuff, and I don't want it to be because I know it is the reason I'm saying it, but I just don't want to later down the road have people think that I'm just like talking about stuff that I didn't know at first and I did later. Yeah, this isn't about me and being like, look how much I know, but I do want to be clear and say this, because I said the date, and so this will be good documentation. I know, like, just about everything within clothing as far as imbalances go. Not for any kind of egoic recognition, but because I really I've spent so much time just, cutting up so many items of clothing and studying people just on the TV that I see across the world and in daily life and things, because I get so tiny with things. And so, I mean, yeah, I pretty much know. Gosh, I mean, I'm gonna say it like that because I want it to be heard like that because I pretty much know everything within the imbalances of like the little tiny things. And I don't care if that sounds egoic because I do want it to be heard like that. Yeah, this is very good to say. Yeah, because that's the thing, minding that gap. That's what I'm saying. It's all the little tiny things. That's what I mean when I say I know the little tiny things within clothing. Because yeah, it's like skipping that one morning prayer is like buying a shirt like this it has no side seams, which I always say is the most ideal, right? The ones that come from that armpit down the sides of the shirt. It doesn't have that, and you rarely ever see me wearing those, if you even see me wearing those. Not that I couldn't ever, but I pretty much don't. Except for button-ups, they're different. But like as far as just an actual just t-shirt, undershirt type thing, right against your body, but well, because button-ups are just stitched different, right? They're pretty well flat, and some of these seams are like coming in like this together, and then they get pinned down once they hit the bottom or the end. But no, I mean, you get a shirt that's this like balanced, if you will. There's no tag, there's no what I call the dreaded collar seam. The collar's all one band of material, right? I mean, it's really even in most all ways, but then you've got these little tiny seams that come into the armpits. The seam's full length is only about 4 inches long, like, I don't know, maybe 8 centimeters, give or take. I don't know, like, how to convert that so exact, but, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, just like this short little distance here, but that seam will infect your entire body. So as intentional as you are about the rest of it, and it's like, oh yeah, it's great, it's pretty even, and there you go, and you buy it. The reason I'm saying this so much so out of like personal experience is because like I mean it's something that I would just talk about to like share and show. Like I'm saying, I really do know the little tiny things within clothing like this, but I've had this shirt since like well maybe even before. No, not maybe. Definitely. I've had this shirt since before I founded In The Image Clothing Company because I was planning on moving to California in July on the 22nd, I think, was like the day I was like planning to leave, and it didn't happen. What actually happened is I read the Book of Mormon the night before I was supposed to go. I didn't actually have a plane ticket yet, but I was pretty well ready to go, and I was just trying to figure out some last minute things and see, maybe, figure out what was going on. And I actually read just the introduction page to the Book of Mormon that night, and I didn't end up leaving for California. I live in Utah currently, where I've lived my whole life up until this point, the United States of America, the state of Utah. But yeah, I just kind of give it some context, so I just want to be real about this stuff, man. But yeah, I bought these shirts, and I had, just a handful of them and few different colors, because you'll see this shirt if you watch some of those In The Image Clothing Company, like main side of the company videos from that time period. That's kind of why I'm being so specific about this, because I'm just speaking real stuff, dude, as I always try to do. I'm always messing up, but so I was using this shirt in a lot of those videos, and the reason I'm saying that is that's the reason I had these shirts, is because there's no logos, there's no tags, simple seams, no side seams. But it wasn't till last night, that would have been the 9th of, or whatever time it was between now and then. My sleep schedule has been kind of like backward. So I've been sleeping in the day part of the time and, awake at night the past few days. But it would have been the 9th of January 2025, which is like yesterday, right? I didn't notice that little tiny seam was uneven. So talking about minding the gap, that's what I mean. It gets so small, little things. I mean, little things. Because I've been aware of these type of seams, and I've been cutting those type of seams since, yeah, I mean, spring 2024. Even though I didn't found In The Image Clothing Company till September. Like, yeah, I mean, I've been doing this stuff for a good while. Yeah, so I mean, it's just the little tiny things, the stuff that slips by you, the stuff that you don't know, man, if you don't know. And so that's a lot of what getting really intentional about being minimal does as well. We have an episode of the podcast, in the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled Minimalism. And I talked a little bit about that. But, I almost just fell over. But yeah, when I, I mean, you start doing stuff, dude, and it's those little tiny gaps, because that's what I mean is people can think they're being pretty intentional about things, but that little tiny thing there still is going to alter the position of your shoulders, and your shoulders don't go anywhere without the rest of your body doing something as well. The body only works as a whole. I mean, skipping your one morning prayer doesn't just go without changing the rest of your day and your life, even if it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, because you just think, oh, it's just one prayer. I mean, yeah, but it's a prayer, I mean, you think, oh, it's just one seam, but it's a seam. You start getting casual about one seam, all of a sudden you stop taking the tags out of your clothing. All of a sudden now you're in a lot of physical pain, and then you know what I mean? It just, things start to get out of hand quick, man. But that's the whole thing about what I was saying when all this stuff's prophesied about. I mean, the world's supposed to be crazy, dude. It's supposed to be something that's hard to navigate. That's what we're here for, is to rely on the one who knows how to navigate it, because he's controlling it, he created it, and he's above it all. But minding that gap, bro, I mean, there's a lot of things, that it's just such a small little thing. It's a little sidestep, a little bit of less intentionality because of something, a little bit of a justification, a little bit of a, man, just being just slightly less intentional. And then we don't got to beat ourselves up for that kind of stuff, I mean, because then all that stuff gets used in the way that it needs to, for what it needs to be used for us to learn from and grow from. But I mean, that's because even like stuff that we could consider big mistakes on our own end, I mean, that stuff gets turned around, our God, he can turn everything and anything around, and he does if he needs it done. So yeah, just minding that gap, though, and that goes with anything in clothing. I mean, even because that's one of the biggest things I talk about within clothing. Not that, the zippers within pants, because even if it's not jeans, generally, if you've got pants with a zipper in the front, it'll have that little tiny stitch that's holding that flap on the rear of the zipper to protect your body from that metal zipper. And that little tiny stitch that holds that flap is something I showed a cut out within our video titled How Zippers Affect Body Mechanics, under the main site of In the Image Clothing Company. And, that little tiny stitch, man, I mean, that gap or non-gap that's there, or whatever, meaning like that flap of material that's pressing, sensory-wise, nervous system of the body-wise, touching against the inside of your left leg, those muscles called adductors, the muscles that pull your leg inward. There's just more sensory activation because that's just pressing against that leg. And that stitch also closes off the left side of the pant leg, but it really affects the right side of the body more. And this is a whole thing I can get into with like how this translates into things within the gospel. I mean, everything's the gospel. It's the truth of all things. But that left side being activated more actually affects the right side most. The whole pelvis and up into where that femur comes into, the socket of the pelvis and the base of the pelvis in the rear, like on your sit bones, like how I'm sitting right now. And, and a lot of internal rotation of the right side gets taken away because that left side gets like stuck into internal rotation. And, the body has to compensate. So the right side kind of falls out into external to try to like do what it can. So it's just such a small little thing. So when we think about, like I was saying about that, just the hypothetical of like that thing you're going to downtown on Thursdays, and, that little gap can actually more negatively affect your church experience, because then, the reason what I'm correlating that with is how the left side having more sensory activation against that little flap of material behind that zipper, affecting the right side worse than the left. Well, the things you're doing on that Thursday activity can actually affect your church experience worse. Because now when you're going to church, it's like almost a compensation in certain ways, meaning like you'll approach church differently because of something that happened outside of church, right? The right side of the body operates differently because of what's happening on the left side of it. So you gotta mind that gap. It's the little tiny things, you know? It really is. So yeah, within our hands though as well. I mean, that's another big thing. I'm talking about the physical body. Like you'll notice your dominant hand's probably quite a bit wider than your non-dominant. And even if you are left-handed, I mention this often, clothing designs are quote unquote right-handed. Like what I'm saying with that zipper flap and things like the dreaded collar seam and stuff it really is mostly on one side more than the other and almost always across the globe. So it's usually that right hand, but it could be your left if that is your dominant one, but it's probably quite a bit wider than your other hand. And, there's a lot of that with just shoulder seams falling over, to the side that you're using more just because gravity's going to be pulling on that side as you're using it. And, so that whole side is just more external anyway, farther away from your actual center line of your body. So that's what I'm saying is minding the gap between the arm, the inside of that upper arm, and your rib cage, because that gap's probably greater on your right side, or at least your dominant side. But like I'm saying, it's probably still your right side, and it's crazy, dude, just how real all this is. I mean, just minding the gap. I mean, the space between your fingers on one hand versus the other, and your feet, whatever side you're not tying toward the center of you. If you are tying your shoes unevenly, which should never be done, that side probably has like a wider foot than the other side. And so minding that gap, getting everything in line, getting everything, like getting your ducks in a row, if you will. I mean, it's like going to church every Sunday. Like if you miss a day or miss a week or whatever, I mean, like mind the gap. Try to do all that you can. I mean, stuff happens. Like don't get so nitpicky to where like something crazy came up and you couldn't get to church. Cool, stuff happens. But like if it's something that's like on you because you had every ability to do it and you didn't, stuff like that, I mean, it's like removing the tags from clothing. If you've got every ability to take a tag out, whether you even have access to a pair of scissors, I mean, use two rocks and like put a rock down on your lap or on the ground and put the tag on top of it and use another rock and scrape it against it to cut it in half. I mean, like I'm not joking with that stuff. I mean it. If you've got any way to do something and you're just not doing it, that's that like gap that you're not minding. It's like you're creating a gap. You're creating, man, in a lot of ways, like a gap between the life that you know that you could be living because you do know our God and what he wants for you, and the life you're currently living. And the reason there is a gap is because of your decisions. In the reasons that it is, that's what I'm correlating with that. Like if you can do it, you can do it. There's no excuse if there's a way for you to actually do it, whatever it is, and anything about being able to be mindful about something, So, gosh, dude, this is a hard-hitting, beautiful episode. But I actually think I'm going to wrap this up. I love this. So, yeah, like I said, it's I guess the 11th of January, 2025, whatever date I said at the beginning, because I checked the date right before I started this. But I want to address as well, the past few episodes are like, around in there, some of the higher 20s or early 30s or whatever. And just anytime that does happen, if an episode gets cut off before I do an outro, it's just the storage got full on this little device that I'm filming with. In comparison to modern storage amounts on devices, this one's got a really low storage, yeah, related to other ones. Like, I'm not complaining about it, but it's just that what I do is I got to delete usually quite a bit of stuff when I start to film something like a podcast episode, because they're sometimes around an hour or, however long they end up being. So, just kind of want to address that. It's not like I'm like cutting things out that I didn't want in there. I mean, that's up to me anyway, but that's just not what has happened up until this point that I can speak on for sure. right? So just a little bit of context, but because that's what happened with the last episode. So that's kind of why I'm saying it right now. But yeah, we are in the Image Clothing Company. We will have clothing available just to help people, just to help the body, just to allow the body to work, staying centered, fitting correct. I've said this, and I was thinking about this last night, and I was thinking it's like probably a thing to say. Not for anyone to even care, but just because I really think it's the case. Because like there's tailors across the globe, people who alter clothing to make it fit people ideally, and there's a lot of stuff like that. A lot of people that do know a lot of stuff about clothing. There's anatomy experts and people who know the human body well, but I really don't know, man, how much of, or if anybody across the globe knows quite to the extent that I do, how to really have the relationship between clothing and the human body be what it is. I mean, in the fullness of like everything together, as far as clear from the feet all the way to the head, hats, shoes, pants, shirts, tags, in things, socks, and undergarments, and I don't know. I mean, because I don't care to be like the person who knows the most about it, but I was kind of like praying about it last night, and I'm like, because I've said that before, that like kind of how I worded it just now, like I don't know, honestly, just if there is anybody that knows quite to the extent. But I mean, there's so many people on the earth that like it seems to me that they're pretty much would almost have to be. But I was feeling like it was a good thing to say again, like. Yeah, it's not about me getting any kind of recognition, but it's just like, I really am wondering, if anyone really does know to quite the extent. I don't know. And it's because that's a weird thing to say. There's no kind of reason for like that I have to be saying that, but I just kind of feel like I need to be saying that right now. So, and it doesn't feel wrong to say. So I think the point with, why that came up right then, other than like I was saying last night, I started to, I was praying and that came to me again, but is because I'm going to be selling clothing, or like our company, in the Image Clothing Company, the community, the family that we are, we will have clothing. And so that's the whole thing, is just like the only reason we would and stuff is just to allow the body to work. And so I just really do know how to allow that to happen within everybody, man, everybody really across the whole earth. So, and that's why I was pretty clear to mention, through this too, when I was talking about these seams in this shirt here, that like, I really am aware of like just the slightest little things that, because I think that's a big part of it, is a lot of people just, no matter how much they do know about clothing or the human body or whatever, there's certain things that they might just like not even care so much about, even if they knew, because they just don't quite know the extent of the like relationship between the two. And well, if they do or don't, it doesn't, I don't care to be like the smartest person about it, but it's just, I really want to do all that I can within this, within what I know about this stuff, and sharing the information, just helping people, so we don't need to be in pain if there's something we can do about it. So this really is the fix in just about every single case when it comes to just physical pain that just seems to persist. So it's really awesome just to be able to be in this position and be able to do this, but that's what I'm saying is, right, our clothing will stay centered, fit correct, and just allow the body to work. That's how I say that. That's how I word it, because that's what it's going to do. Otherwise, I don't care to sell clothing, because I don't care to buy clothing. I'm not like a fashion person. I buy stuff used, and I'm just so appreciative of stuff that's just good, regardless of if it like looks fashionable or, no, it's just good as far as natural materials, and it just fits my body and doesn't restrict it. That's what I want, so that's what we're going to put out. So, so yeah, I guess look out for that if you want. And I can't tell you as of right now when that's going to be, but yeah, so I just know that it will. And that's another one of those things, like, I don't care to sell clothing, but I'm glad that I'm able to do it. And the reason I almost got tripped up on that, I mean, I think that was still correct grammar, but I'm glad that, I'm able to know things that I don't know. That's really how it is. It's like, I don't know. I don't even know how that's going to look or work, or, who's going to be making it for us, or where it's going to be made, or how we're going to source the materials, and how we're going to keep it natural, and, what that means, and stuff, and how simple it's really going to be, or if we're going to have some designs that are, kind of unique, even though we're going to keep it pretty minimal. Like, I don't know, but I just know. And that's, if those of you who are disciples of Jesus Christ out there and have had experiences where you've just been trying to do all you can to do what we're commanded to do and surrender to our Heavenly Father's will. And you know what I'm saying within that, probably, you know. There's been a lot of stuff in my life like that. It's like, I don't have any idea what I'm doing, but I just know I'm supposed to do it. And then it just like works out. And it's like, what? That's how this whole company is, it has been. And, you know, I'm just trying to really, really just surrender my will to God's and do all that I can to be obedient. So, I love that, man. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you. Like I said, I am Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. This company, man, and this thing that I've been given. You know, I mean, it's so weird. It's weird. I don't care for anyone to think that it's weird or for it to like be seen any certain way. But I just say that out of authenticity, out of just like, it's like I'm saying, I don't even know what I'm doing, you know? But I know that it's working. And it's kind of like love, you know? It's like you try to explain love to someone and you kind of can't. But like, you know what it is. But that's the spirit as well, you know? When you're preaching the gospel and sharing the truth of all things with people, it's like you can't fully explain it to them, but they can know it. And you know it, even though you can't quite put it into words. That's how this whole company's been, and that's the approach that I will try to always have to everything that I do, right? Is no matter what, if it's making sense to me or not, I'm just gonna keep doing all that I can to listen to promptings and just, all right, cool, you're saying to do this, we'll do it. I don't know why, it doesn't make sense, but cool. I guess we'll either find out or not, but either way, you know, I talk about a lot of the time, dude, pretty much the only thing this life is about is obedience. You know, I mean, within the temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we make covenants, two-way promises with our God. And one of those covenants is, they call it the law of obedience, you know, and I'd say that's the biggest thing over anything else in this life, is just being obedient to our God, because he knows best, and it doesn't have to make sense to us, but he knows best in everything, always. And so if he's saying to sit down and, you know, make 2 podcast episodes back to back, okay. You know, if he's saying to just start a company about clothing, when I am not a fashion person, and that's how I always thought about clothing growing up, was like the fashion shows, and I didn't care about it, and I still don't. So, you know, it's like, the point is, I'll do it, right? No matter what. All right, you saying it? I'm hearing you, and I know that I'm hearing you. So I'll do it. You know, I don't know. If I don't understand why, even ever in this life, then I don't need to. I just need to know that I'm doing all that I can do to be obedient. And I'm going to continue to mess up. Always. I'm a human being. But, you know, I mean, yeah, man. I mean, this, yeah, just about being obedient to our God. Minding that gap, though, man, because that's what happens as well, is, you know, gosh, yeah, see, I love this. I love the podcast. I mean, how many times have I said that? If you have heard past episodes of the podcast, or if you've heard, like, main company side of things videos, where I'm like I reference the podcast, you know, and the 3 sides we have, and I'm like, I love the podcast. It's been so amazing. Like, I mean it. I love it, because this is what I can do. I'm just sitting here against the wall on the ground, and I'm just, you know, I'm just talking, but it's like intentional. It's purposeful. It's a place to be just totally authentic and really share my testimony and share the gospel, and I just love it. So yeah, I don't know exactly what got me into saying that part of that right there, but maybe that's really what it was, is just saying how much I love the podcast, because, you know, just being able to be obedient, man, and you know, like, I don't know. Oh, what I was saying is, yeah, if I never understand, even, you know, into the rest of this life, it doesn't matter, right? I don't care. It's just such a testimony builder. The more that we do out of not knowing, we just know that we're supposed to, and we don't know why. But yeah, I feel like I was saying some more though. I was talking about minding the gap again, and that's what I've been talking about. But as far as like, I don't know. I mean, I guess just being able to share my own experience, man. Maybe that's what it was within, talking about. I started talking about the podcast, and because there's been so many times in my life where, yeah, I mean, I totally just opposed what I knew I was supposed to be doing and what I'd been prompted to do and had been doing in the past and what we're commanded to do. And, I so disobedient for a lot of times in my life. And, but it really is good, as weird as that is to say it, because then I'm able to share out of experience of what happens, the repercussions that come from having the gaps, stopping your church attendance and your prayers and your scripture reading. I know it out of experience. Don't believe me, but you can listen to my stories if you want. And you can pray to the same God that I do and get answers just as direct as I do. And know the truth that I'm just doing all that I can do to relay. So, I mean, just a lot of things, man, where yeah, stay purposeful, intentional, mind the gap. And not just clothing, but then like I'm saying, when we talk about the imbalances within the body, I started to mention like the spaces between the hands and the feet and the arms and the body. But yeah, anywhere within your body, there's two sides of you, man. I mean, even if you've got something different about you, deformity, injury, amputation, whatever, still, I mean, you still have the spine in the center of you, and we gotta mind the gaps. I'm doing air quotes, but I mean it, as far as like physically, between our joints, you can feel from left to right on the body. And if one just feels different than the other, do what you can within just your own hands to release that stuff that's bound up, to get it as close to the same as the other side as you can. So, you know, yeah, in whatever ways it can mean, we got to watch out for those gaps, because we're human beings, man. And there's so much stuff that we can have the potential to take, part in and put importance on. I mean, you hear things so similar to that if you listen to past episodes up until this point in the podcast, but that's why I talk about it, because yeah, in the Image Clothing Company podcast, speaking truth, I mean, we just live in a modern man-made world, and there's just so much that we could potentially think is more important than like going to church, or especially on like a Wednesday for this, using my day of institute as an example, where that's when we go, and anything else that comes up on a Wednesday night, well, maybe it's coming up, but where's your intention, And I'm not trying to like get after people, because I've done it, but that's what I mean. No matter who's doing it, like, where's your intention? What's more important to you? Going to institute, even if you're thinking like, it's just institute, I mean, I do go and I understand, but like, you know, I've been to this class before, or, whatever, or, my friend or whatever is going to the class and they can tell me what happened there, and I'm going to go to this thing. The point is, like, something else coming up on a Wednesday night, and you choose to do that over going to institute, I mean, it can seem pretty harmless, but it's these little things over time, right? Little imbalance within the seam direction in an armpit, a little tiny eighth of an inch slash half a centimeter, give or take, seam. But every single day, I mean, that gap just being there, it adds up, Missing institute once, then goes to missing it potentially every week for, could be a long time. And all of a sudden you're in a place you never thought you would be, Behaviors just stack up. This gap that once seemed so small in whatever aspect, this could be physical, metaphoric, gospel stuff, spiritual things, relationships, behaviors, you know, or just the level of intentionality. That's a huge thing as a human being, is just being intentional. what starts really small can get bigger over time. They call it like a snowball effect, right? If some people don't even know what snow is so much. I mean, they probably kind of know what it is, most everybody. Some people might not know at all. But yeah, snow, right? When it snows and you make a snowball, and if you start to roll it down a hill, it grows because the snow, connects to the other snow. It all adheres to itself and gets bigger as it goes. That's why they call it a snowball effect. Yeah, I mean, there's probably some people in the world that, well, definitely many people across the globe that have never seen snow, but there's probably some people that don't even really know what snow is. It's frozen water. It's rain that comes down, but it's in little, like, you know, like partially frozen flakes. That's cool, dude. And that's what I mean. Just how real it gets within. That's how this has been and always will be in the Image Clothing Company. Just so real. Like, as some people don't even know what snow is, so that analogy wouldn't even make any sense to them. But yeah, just those small gaps in things that we know we should be doing can potentially get pretty big pretty quick. Well, because yeah, I'm not holding back anything, but I'm not, oh gosh, getting a cramp in my calf, dude. I wasn't holding back anything, but I'm not going to continue to I was just going to use another analogy that's similar to the snowball effect. But yeah, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm grateful, though. I mean, it's really awesome. The reason I got that cramp is, again, you might be able to hear it in the audio. It's no joke, like the leg hairs or like my pants. And you could see it probably if you're watching this, but I've been like doing stuff to the outside of my right knee, right? Because that ankle's been pulled into external rotation, tracking outward rather than naturally in with that gripped arch for so many years. So, I'm just, again, as I've done in past episodes of the podcast, as I'm sitting right here in the same location, finding physical breakthroughs that are from things that people across the entirety of our earth can relate to and can help them. And so me being the founder, it's really cool, to just also have this stuff documented within an episode of the podcast. But anyway, my calf started to cramp up as I was like saying I wasn't going to say that second analogy. So anyway, yeah. The point is, no matter what analogy you want to use, it's just the little tiny things over time aren't so small anymore, because I'm going to say this, actually. We tend to think things are smaller than they are as human beings. A lot of times we're